Why is it that when Netflix offers thousands of choices with new movies and series released every week, you still find yourself returning to the same show again and again? The same characters, the same lines, even the jokes and the ending you already know by heart. And yet, you press play. Why is it that while other people are always searching for the next new show, you feel more drawn to stories you've already seen many times, the familiar scenes, the familiar dialogue, the familiar rhythm? Somehow, they bring a strange sense of comfort. And why is it that sometimes, when life becomes chaotic, exhausting, or simply too much to handle, the thing you want most is not something new, but that one show you've already watched countless times? If this experience sounds familiar, then what we're exploring today is not why some people are too lazy to try new content. What we're really trying to understand is a deeper psychological pattern. Why, for some people, familiarity itself is a form of comfort, and why watching something again and again is not a sign of being stuck, but often the brain's surprisingly intelligent way of restoring its sense of balance. You may have moments like this. The day is over. You get home and open Netflix. New shows appear everywhere. New movies are constantly recommended. But in the end, the thing you click on is the same show you've already seen many times. Maybe it's Friends, maybe it's The Office, maybe it's a movie whose ending you already know. You know which character is about to say which line. You even know which moment will help you relax. Many people assume this is just habit, or maybe even a kind of laziness. But in psychology, this pattern is often connected to a deeper need: predictability. When life becomes chaotic, stressful, and filled with uncertainty, the brain naturally begins searching for an environment it can control. And familiar stories provide exactly that. You don't have to worry about what will happen next. The plot won't surprise you. The characters won't suddenly create new tension. Everything unfolds exactly as you expect. Research shows that this sense of predictability can lower stress responses and help the nervous system relax. So for many people, rewatching is not a sign of being stuck in the past. It's a way of reclaiming a small space of calm in a world that often changes too quickly. By the end of the day, your mind is often already exhausted. Maybe you've sat through several meetings, answered dozens of emails, solved problems, made decision after decision. By the time evening arrives, your brain has already spent a huge amount of energy. Now imagine turning on a brand new show. Your brain has to start working again. New characters to remember, new relationships to understand, a new storyline to follow. Every detail demands attention. But when you rewatch something familiar, the situation is completely different. You already know the characters. You already understand the story. The plot barely requires any effort to follow. Psychologists refer to this phenomenon as reduced cognitive load. In simple terms, your brain works like a battery. When mental demand becomes too high, it naturally begins searching for a lower effort state. And familiar content provides exactly that. Many people treat their favorite shows as a kind of background companion. Maybe you're eating dinner while familiar dialogue plays, or letting an old sitcom run as you get ready for bed. At that point, the story itself is no longer the main focus. What matters is that your brain no longer needs to work to understand something new. And in that moment, it finally gets a quiet form of rest. Sometimes the reason you keep rewatching a show has very little to do with the story itself. It has to do with memory. Maybe the first time you watched that show was during a summer in school. You finished your homework, sat down in front of the TV, and pressed play. Maybe it was in a college dorm, where you and your friends binge-watched an entire season together. Or maybe it was during a period when you had just moved to a new city, and those quiet evenings felt a little lonely. When you press play again today, you're not just watching a story, you're stepping back into a moment in time. Psychology sometimes describes this as the nostalgia effect. Nostalgia isn't simply remembering the past, it's closer to a kind of emotional time travel. The familiar images, the music, the dialogue, all of them can reactivate emotional memories stored in the brain. Research shows that when people encounter media connected to personal memories, the brain's memory systems and emotional systems become active at the same time. That's why even when you already know what will happen next, a scene can still move you. Because what you're feeling isn't just the story, it's the memory of who you were when that story first entered your life. So when you rewatch that show, you're not only returning to the story. For a moment, you're returning to the past. Sometimes you don't rewatch something because you want to relax, and it's not because of nostalgia either. Sometimes it's simply curiosity. The first time you watch a story, your attention is usually focused on the plot. You want to know what will happen next, what choices the characters will make, and where the story will lead. But when you watch it again, something begins to change. Your attention shifts. You start noticing details you missed the first time. Maybe it's a brief expression on a character's face. Maybe it's a line of dialogue that seemed insignificant before, or a small detail quietly hidden in the background. Psychological research suggests that some people are naturally more drawn to these kinds of details. This tendency is often connected to a personality trait known as openness. When your openness is high, you're more likely to enjoy complex structures, hidden meanings, and subtle patterns. So when you rewatch a show, it doesn't feel like repetition. It feels more like exploration. In fact, many films and series are intentionally designed this way. Some details only become visible the second or even the third time you watch. And slowly, you begin to realize something. A truly good story is rarely something you experience only once. Each time you return to it, you may discover something new. When you get home at night and once again press play on that show you've already seen many times, someone might ask you why you keep watching the same thing. And for a moment, you may find it difficult to explain. Because in many people's minds, entertainment should always move forward. New stories, new characters, new excitement. But sometimes what you truly need is not something new. Sometimes what you need is something familiar. When you press play again, you may be looking for a sense of safety, or simply allowing an exhausted mind to rest for a while. And sometimes you are revisiting a chapter of your life, and sometimes you are simply noticing details you once overlooked. The same story can hold different meanings at different moments in your life. So rewatching is not about being stuck. Often, it is simply the brain engaging in a quiet form of self-regulation. In a world that constantly pushes you to move faster, to try something new, to keep chasing the next thing, you still know what truly helps you relax. And perhaps that doesn't mean you resist change. Perhaps it simply means you've begun to understand your own rhythm. Because sometimes what restores us is not a new story, but the ones we already know. This is Felix. May you understand yourself a little deeper and treat the growing version of you with patience and kindness. See you next time.